Alright, so since this is a game channel, I figured the only time I would ever talk about books is if there's a game that's based on books. And the only game that I've ever loved enough to want to talk about the books about is The Witcher. But anyone who's ever heard of The Witcher has either already played it or read the books or know everything they want to know about it. So I figured there's nothing to be left to be said, and so I just kind of didn't do that. But I heard that Owlcat was making their own Mass Effect style, sort of space exploration RPG, and we've desperately needed that since, like, when's the last one to come out? Like, Mass Effect 3 came out 2013. Andromeda doesn't exist in my eyes.
Why not? Couldn't get into it.
Explain yourself. What didn't you like about it?
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
Anyways, I ended up picking up Leviathan Wakes. I also picked up, what is that? Abaddon's Gate. I picked up the second book, Caliban's War. I got the fourth book. I got the fifth. You get the point. I basically got most of the books. I think there's, I think there's 12 books in total. I might be wrong on that. I know there's at least 10 books, novels, and there's one short story collection. I'm not sure if I plan to read all of them, but I like to at least get through most of them before I eventually, play the Owlcat video game that's going to come out. But we're going to be talking about Leviathan Wakes today. I just completed it. This is what's like 561 pages. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about what I liked and what I didn't like about this book, because there's quite a lot I like about this book, honestly, but there is a lot I don't like about this. And the 560 pages, I would say a good 300 of them annoyed the hell out of me the entire time. And I don't know, I mean, it was engaging enough for me to keep reading it, but it also just kept pushing me, like, to my tolerance for annoyance. A lot of it boils down into like 2 to 3 points. Sorry, I don't have like a list or anything professional. I'm just someone who's talking about the book. But with that out of the way, let me tell you what I liked about this book. And honestly, it's going to be kind of a short list, but it's very impactful that these things is something that I like, because number one is the characters, like overall the characters in the world of The Expanse, or at least in book 1. I feel like I usually say this, like, to anyone I talk to, the number one most important thing in a story is to have likable, or at least well written, relatable, that kind of thing, characters that are interesting enough to keep the story going. It doesn't matter how good your world building is. It doesn't matter how good your plot is, how good the plot twists are, how interesting it is. If your characters are dry, if they're uninteresting, bland, characters no one cares about, none of it matters, right? The characters are who are on the screen or on the page, and they matter a hell of a lot more than, just like a really good plot that, the characters are the backdrop to, right? So most of the characters in this book so far, like in the crew, the people that we talk to, try not to spoil, but I liked most of them. I feel like most of them were not such one-dimensional introductions as you usually get. Like, a lot of books, when they like to start out character introductions, they start out very one note and then build on them as the series goes on. I feel like the book did a really good job of establishing characters early, while also leaving up a lot of, like a lot of mystery, a lot of it to the reader's interpretation, because we just don't know much about them outside of the 2 protagonists that I'll get into, which is something that I didn't like that it did, was I feel like the Duel-protagonist thing kind of hurt the book, but we'll get into that later. But I feel like overall, most of the characters in this book, honestly, I like them. Maybe they're not like, it's not like they're amazingly well written, but I enjoyed reading about them.
I had my fun, and that's all that matters.
But outside of the crews themselves, honestly, I feel like the world building has just been, like, solid. Like, it's been gradual, but it's been solid. The way that they explain how the solar system works, the ecosystem of each individual planets, I feel like has been very spot on. And that's something that I appreciate as someone who doesn't traditionally read sci-fi, is that it was easy for me to like grasp the themes of sci-fi without getting too like technical. And yeah, it's very easy for me to understand like the mathematics of things. You know, I'm not sure what kind of sci-fi this is. I'm not sure there's different categories of sci-fi, but for a sci-fi book, the world building, I feel like, in my opinion, was at least pretty good. All of that is to say that I feel like the world building in this book has been extremely easy to understand, but not like simplistic, you know, complex enough for me to, you know, think about the things that are happening and to be interested and engaged, but easy enough to, you know, at least semi-follow for someone who's not, you know, traditionally used to sci-fi. But I don't know. I guess now we'll start with the things I don't like. Like, I know I only named like 2 things I really liked, but honestly, those 2 things did a lot of heavy lifting that made me continue reading the book. These next couple of things that I don't like are things I really don't like. And the first, again, like I've already mentioned, is the Duel-protagonist. And it's because I cannot stand either of the protagonists in this book. I hate them. You know, I might be able to understand like where they're coming from, but it doesn't mean I have to like them, right? It's like a villain. A villain can be a villain for, you know, understandable reasons. They're still a villain. You still don't have to like them. And that's true with the protagonist of this book. We'll start with the first kind of protagonist, who is James or Jem Holden. He is the leader of, you know, like the main space crew that we follow throughout pretty much the entire book. And you'll hear this in a lot of like other reviews, or if you like read it on, you know, like anywhere you'll read reviews on. Holden is a very, he's even called this by everyone in the book, very self-righteous, very goody two-shoes, very naive. He's called naive probably more times than a child's called naive, right? Because his views on how the world is supposed to be, on how like things should go, is just so like childlike. It's so like 10-year-old thinking. And honestly, it kind of jars with the fact that he's in a leadership position. After, you know, certain events take place with him and his space crew, he ends up being thrusted into a leadership position. And man, it like every step of the way, he seems like a toddler trying to lead adults. And you can tell it in their delivery. You can tell it in the way his crew treats him. You can tell it in the way his crew responds to him. Half of his orders aren't followed. Half of the time that he's leading, it's really just him, you know, like delegating the leadership role to like Naomi. She's his XL, or like sort of like a co-leader, right? But she's essentially the leader of the crew. Anything that she says we're not going to do, they're not going to do. Anything that she says she thinks that they should do, they're going to do. And he's basically just, you know, riding her coattails, because he doesn't actually know what he's doing. And any decision that he has or does make ends up in catastrophic failure, and turns out to be one of the worst decisions you could ever make. So that already like puts me off majorly. As someone is like almost a nepo baby. He's being thrusted into this position of leadership, and has shown massive incompetence throughout the entire book. And like from the very first decision he makes in this book is literally one of the worst, like most costly decisions in the entire universe of the solar system of this world. That's how much of that's the kind of character we're talking about here. And it's very hard to read and like get engaged into a character who doesn't learn from their mistakes.
The is that? Shit!
There was no let up for this character. From start to finish, every single decision he makes is, at least for me personally, has been infuriating. I know I said I love the characters. I do love the characters. Oh, but the protagonist, I don't like either of the protagonists of the book, and I love every other character of the book. So there's that. Well, I guess we'll go to the second protagonist, who is Detective Miller, and he's this detective on Sarah's station. I forget exactly where that is. I think it's on an asteroid or something. It's not important, but he's sort of just like a, you know, old time detective, you know, just upholding security, doing police work, stuff like that. and he is then tasked with this mission by his captain to go kidnap this rich girl from a very rich family. And as we see him dive into this case, we understand that he's a man who has lived with so much regret and who has done so little with his life, that this new case that he takes on, that he thinks is just like a run-of-the-mill, get the girl, deliver her to her family case, turns into this sort of like self-discovery of sorts. And it really is not enjoyable to read. We get to see a man who is approaching 50 start to obsess over a 20-year-old girl that he's never met. Right? That's the girl that he's meant to, capture, kidnap, whatever you want to call, and deliver her back to her family. We start to see him literally unravel unto himself, and his career collapse under him because he can't let go of this obsession. He is first given this task by his captain. She then sees that he's unable to, separate himself from this personally. She takes him off it. He won't relent. She then fires him. He loses his entire career, has his whole self-discovery, act. Basically has mental breakdowns every left, right, and center. It's not fun to watch. There's multiple moments where, something major happens, and it's like his mental health deteriorates even further. It's like there's a breaking point. There's a milestone of breaking points that he keeps reaching, and he keeps losing himself. And it's not fun to watch. And especially when it basically follows the, stalking of this 20-year-old girl, again, that he's never met. Because, I guess it's kind of a spoiler, but he ends up getting fired because of his, ties to this 20-year-old girl. And the fact that this organization doesn't want him looking into her anymore. They want him to get off the case, but he relents. So he's fired for that. And he basically drops everything, his entire career, everyone he knew, and is chasing a lead that will eventually help him find this girl. And then he's like, at that point, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Even though he's off the job, there's no job anymore for him to do. He doesn't have to go kidnap her or, take her, he doesn't have to do any of that anymore. But he's still on this mission to hunt her down and then just see what happens. Really, really creepy energy the entire time. He even starts to get hallucinations of her, of an imaginary her constantly on his shoulder or next to him. It's weird. It's so weird to read. It gets weirder as the book goes on. He even talks to someone he knew on Eros, which will be a very, very important place. This place called Eros Station. And he talks to someone there, and then the guy's like, "Wait, so you're just in love with her?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I guess you are right. I'm in love with her." And right there, I got such an ick. It can't be described. This guy who basically threw everything away to chase down this lead from a 20-year-old girl that he's never actually. She might not actually be 20. She was estimated about 20, but you get the picture. And that's basically why I don't like the protagonist of this book, is because one is a almost 50-year-old maniac losing his mind, stalking, not really stalking, but obsessed over this 20-year-old girl that he's never met. And the other is a incompetent, naive captain who every step of the way makes the worst possible decision, and it's not a fun experience. The only reason why I could keep going is because of all the other characters they interact with, Havelock, one of Miller's old partners. You can tell this is the guy you can grab a beer with, and he's just one of the coolest guys. The same goes with Amos, which is one of Holden's crewmates. Again, Naomi, like I said, Alex, like I said, just all really, really well-rounded and likable characters compared to the not likable protagonist counterparts. But anyways, I'm going into something else I didn't like, and it was the writing in particular. Even though I feel like the writing for the most part was consistent, there was a couple of moments where I felt like I was reading amateur writing that, I don't know, a high schooler could have done. because there are certain moments of description, and this is something that goes even to like the Wheel of Time. There's certain moments of description that literally just do not need to be there. Like, it feels like the authors, because this is dual authored, I don't know whose decision it was to describe things in the way that they did, but it added no value to the reading experience, and it made me question why I started reading the book, because I can't really spoil it, but there's certain phrases they would use, the way they would describe certain things, it just came off in bad taste, and it was just like, I don't know, it just felt like very like edgy writing at times for moments that were like completely like uncalled for. It could be describing just the most mundane random moment and then using an analogy that makes absolutely no sense given the context. And yeah, I don't know, I just also there was you could kind of tell when one author took over compared to the other author. I know that they shared like the character writing, whoever wrote, you know, certain characters, and you can kind of tell because the tonal shift from writing is kind of aggressive. It's not that big a deal, honestly. Like, you won't notice it so much, but combined with the really weird like amateur metaphors and slogans that's being used, and just moments that feel so out of place, honestly, it adds to an experience where the writing, I feel like, probably should be better than it is for a series that has as good world building as it does. Again, these are two different things. The world building can be good, and I feel like the writing quality cannot be, you know, up to par for the world building that's in the book. Like I said, this book is about like war, politics. I want to see more fights, and I mean like genuine fights, like dog fights from ships, you know, boarding invasion fights, you know, just like fights in general, because we hear about the war going on, but it's in the background mostly. Like, we only see like upfront action like 5-6 times throughout the entire book, and when they do happen, it's like so intense, and it's like, oh my god, I'm there for it, and I can't put the book down, even though I don't like the protagonists that are in that moment, but I can't put the book down because these intense combat moments or sequences are so engaging. That's basically all I got. That's my whole like semi-spoily kind of review for Leviathan Wakes. I'll probably do another review probably in like 3 weeks. Just depends on how much time I have. I'm really interested to see how they'll handle some of these like plot points, and how they'll handle, you know, some of these themes that I didn't really vibe with so well, and how they'll handle some of the ones I did really enjoy. But yeah, I don't know, I'm here for it. I'm probably gonna get through the entire series, hopefully, unless it's just like nosedives off a cliff in terms of quality. I've only ever had to do that to one series ever, and I won't say which series, but I was like 5 books deep, and then I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't World of Time, it was a different series, but I was like, I can't do it. There was like 3 books left. I was done. It was by Brandon Sanderson, but you'll figure out which one it is. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video, you know, and yeah, let me know your thoughts down below if you have read Leviathan Wakes. Anyways, catch you next time.